In a democracy, you proceed slowly. You don't proceed at one fell swoop. If you take the societies which have ostensibly declared equality as their basic goal, the societies like China and like Russia, there's no question, we all agree that those are terrible, tyrannical societies. And so in a country like Britain and the United States, you have stopped very short of the objective, but there's no doubt what the objective of the parties has been.
Well, I think Peter may want to come in here, and I should say that in this one I shall take the opportunity to play a bit myself, because you're right squarely in my area of special interest.
That'll let me be the moderator for a change.
Yes, indeed. I don't accept for a minute that there has been a calculated move to absolute equality in the social policy of Britain since the war. And I've lived there during the time. I write the history of it. I teach social policy, and you're wrong on this one, Milton, but I give it to you, Peter.
Well, I think Milton
that's what's known as a 1-2.
Yes.
Milton is still equivocating as to whether he is attacking the idea of absolute equality, in which case his examples of the Labour Party, his examples of some sections of the Democratic Party just don't stand up, or whether he is maintaining the proposition that any concern to reduce inequalities of result, of outcome, not of opportunity, but of result, is wrong. Now, if he is saying the second, it seems to me that arguments that he's made don't tend to show that result. It is perfect. Well, just let me finish, because we let you finish.
Okay.
It is perfectly reasonable for a society to say, or for people in a society to say, and together through their political process to express the thought, that there are many objectives that society has. Efficiency is one, prosperity is one, freedom is perhaps the most important of all, that concern about equality, or at least about reducing inequality, is another. And that we should ask ourselves the question, are all the inequalities that we face, the gross inequalities described in Dickens, the gross inequalities which you yourself reported in India, the gross inequalities which you yourself said in the film were offensive and were unfair, are all of these justified by the criteria of freedom and efficiency, or are some of them unnecessary? In other words, we take the principle that there should only be such inequality as is necessary and justified by one of the other criteria of a society. Now, if you're willing to say that, then you're not in disagreement with anybody. If you're denying that, you've made no arguments to support what you're saying.
Now, before we have Milton reply, we must bring in Thomas.
I think we're talking at cross purposes. On the one hand, we're talking about results that we're hoping for. On the other hand, we're talking about processes that we're setting in motion. You're saying, should we hope for certain kinds of lessening of inequality and so on? The real question, the political question is, shall we set in motion certain processes because we hope for that? And do those processes enhance or reduce freedom? And I think the argument that Milton is making, certainly the argument that I would make, is that the attempt at doing these things, and it doesn't really matter, it's a complete straw man to talk about absolute inequality. No, not
yes,
at all.
Yes, it is,
no.
Absolutely. Throughout the film, this is the straw man he brings up in order to say how ridiculous to have absolute equality. And then he goes on to say how ridiculous to have
my whole point is
homogenization as well.
As a result, you see, that you set up processes whose end result may not be any more or less inequality than exists now, but the question is, those processes may indeed reduce freedom greatly. I would go beyond the question of equality and put it more generally, that any process to ascribe any status to any group of people, equality, inferiority, superiority, must necessarily reduce freedom, because whatever the government wishes to ascribe to any group, whatever place, to use the phrase that was very common in the South, that blacks should have their place, whatever place the government is going to assign to people, that place will not coincide, that place will not coincide either with what all those people are doing or with how others perceive all those people, because there's too much diversity among human beings. To maintain any system of ascribed status from the top is going to mean reducing people's freedom across the spectrum. That's the point.
People have an ascribed status. It isn't as if government, by its intervention, creates it. People are born into this world in a given sector of a society, and many, many of them are born at the bottom of the society. The argument about equality of results was an argument that was linked to equality of opportunity. People recognized that unless there was a degree of equality in a degree of enough food, enough security, access to education, unless these things were available to all children, then equality of opportunity was merely a mockery. That's why equality of results became an issue, and it became an issue for black people in the United States, and they expressed their concern, whatever the opinion.
You expressed it, damn it, look. No, they did not. They did not.
They expressed
Can I just finish it and then reply?
They expressed their will by their extraordinary participation in a protest movement that began in the late 1950s and didn't end until the 1960s. Intellectuals were not in that protest movement.
You want me to
Black
answer or you want to keep
people were
going?
in that protest.
You want me to answer?
I finished.
Yes.
Good. Black people have never supported, for example, affirmative action, quotas, anything of that sort. Wherever polls have been taking a black opinion on such matters of should people be paid equally or should there be this or that, black people have never taken a position that you describe. So it is not a question of what black people chose to do. It's what you choose to put in the mouths of black people. It is what you choose to project. It is not what any black people have ever said anywhere that you can put your finger on.
It's what you choose to put into the mouth of the pollsters, as far as I can see.
I put in the mouth of the
leadership of the
pollsters?
black community.
Like most people, I have never seen a pollster.
If you look at the leadership of the black...
But I want to go back to the... I want to carry it back to the earlier point. Number one, there's no question about what equality of results, if it comes about through a framework of freedom, is a desirable result. Number two, I argue in the film, I've argued here, that in point of fact, you get greater equality of actual results by a system under which people are free to achieve unequal results. That for the poor people of the world that Francis Fox Piven was talking about, the most effective mechanism for enabling them to improve their status is not a governmental program which seeks to ascribe to them certain positions, which seeks to provide them with certain goods and services, but a governmental program which tries to eliminate arbitrary barriers to advancement. I would say that in this world, the greatest source of inequality has been special privileges granted by government. That government, you may talk a great deal, there may be a lot of talk about how we're going to eliminate inequality. But if you look at, go back to your case of Britain, is there any doubt that one of the effects of governmental intervention in Britain has been to create new opportunities for special classes? That the way to get wealthy in a society that supposedly is aiming at equality, that the way to get wealthy is to get a special government permit to to get foreign exchange, or to import goods, or to, in this country, to set up a television station. Those are the ways in which you get inequality.
Well, I think, Milton, you grossly misrepresent the British experience, and here perhaps I might make the points. First of all, the burden of taxation in Britain is lower, and has been for many years, than in any other of the countries of the European community, the overall burden of taxation. Secondly, you will immediately come back and say, but the marginal rates of personal taxation have been extremely high. Perfectly true, but not as high as they were in the United States until the early 1960s. It's interesting to note in passing that when the United States reduced its 90% maximum personal rate to 50%, the rate of economic growth in the United States, and I'm not suggesting cause and effect, fell from the previously very low rate of 2.5% a year to about 0.4% in the period since, so that any notion that there is an absolutely one-for-one relationship between the degree of personal taxation and efficiency is wholly mythical.
Well, thirdly, I tell you, what you can do with statistics...
Well, you ought to look at the facts. It's easy to make glib remarks about statistics. Look at the fact that in Britain, over the last 30 years, during which period, according to you, Britain has been crushed by egalitarianism, whereas the United States has been soaring away in a glorious state of liberty, the rate of economic growth in Britain has been faster than that in the United States. How do you explain that?
First of all, I have to look at what the figures mean in Britain. I have to look at the way in which...
First you ought to look at them. And then...
I have looked at them, and you realize that in judging output in the government, that's judged in terms of cost, not in terms of product. And what I really ought to look at is not the rate of growth of GNP as the statisticians measure it, but the consumption available to people in forms which, as people value it, ultimate consumption. If I look at that, I get a very different picture. The statistics are very, very, as you know very well, are very easy to use. They can be used to throw light, or they can be used to cast confusion.
One should look at facts.
I agree with you.
Facts are that the amount of goods and services consumed by the government as a proportion of the national output are no higher than Britain than they are in the United States, and haven't been any time since the war.
They have risen very sharply.
Which may be the explanation of the low rate of growth in the United States.
They have risen very sharply. It has risen very sharply in the war.
In both
Since the war, in both countries. Yes. It is higher in Britain than it is in the United States,
both
properly
25%
measured.
in both cases.
The proportion, excuse me, I want to take total, excuse me, that
look,
again is a statistician's nightmare. No, we have to look at total government spending.
You were the one who was talking about whether or not people have freedom to choose how their money is spent. The transfers, which is pensions and other payments from government, leave the freedom as to how the money is spent in the hands of private individuals. It's only the direct consumption of goods and services where the bureaucrats are making the decisions.
It leaves the decision for freedom in the hands of the recipient, but not in the hands of the